Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for 5 ways to scale customer experiences through frontline collaboration. I'm your host. My name is Vishal Vivakar. I am the demand generation manager here at Front, and we have some really awesome guests today from our partners at AskNicely and Salesloft. So let's get this started. So today's speakers, starting off with Sarah Sheik, also my colleague here at Front. She's the head of customer success. Aaron Ward, co-founder and CEO of AskNicely. Taylor Johnston, senior manager of customer success at Salesloft. Nicole Erickson, UX researcher at Salesloft, and myself, Vishal, demand generation at Front. So to start things off, we wanted to do a fun little icebreaker. And so what we wanted to start off with is, what is the last show that you've binge watched? Sarah, I'm going to start with you. You want to take it away?
Sure. I think I'm cheating because I haven't finished binge watching it, but I'm in the final season of Sopranos. So don't tell me what happens.
Definitely. I'm guessing you're binge watching that on DVD, or actually no, they're probably available.
No, HBO's got it.
Aaron, you want to go up next?
Well, I wish I had much more time for TV, but I will say that I've watched actually a New Zealand series on Netflix originally, which is where my accent comes from, called The Casketeers, which is it's a reality show based on a funeral director business in Auckland in New Zealand. And as somber as the subject matter is, it's really funny. I recommend it.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one, but that sounds really cool. Taylor, what about you?
Hi, everyone. The most recent show that I've been binge watching is Chef's Table. So for any of the foodies out there who are interested in just a really in-depth, incredible look at some master chefs around the world, I'd suggest checking it out. It's on Netflix.
I love Chef's Table. That's a really good show.
So good.
Really good scenes and I think art direction there. Nicole, what about you?
Yeah. Well, hello everyone. So I'm kind of a documentary person, but the last show that I actually binge watched was the Great British Baking Show, which I don't know if you've seen it, but it combines like the foodie aspect, but then also the elimination of certain contestants over the season. So I get attached to them, and so I end up watching one season in a sitting.
Nice. 2 cooking shows in a row. I like that. I love cooking shows, actually food shows. But mine currently right now is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It's an Amazon show. It's set in the late 50s about an up-and-coming comedian. And I'll just leave it at that. But it's been pretty addicting. Already 2 seasons done in just a few weeks. Great. So thanks, everyone. Moving on, let's just wanted to cover how today's session will work. So as you have questions, please feel free to add them to chat. There's going to be plenty of time for Q&A at the end, and you will all receive a recording of this webinar right after it's done. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but please keep those questions coming, and we're going to have this Q&A reserved at the very end. And just a quick agenda. So an introduction. We're going to go into a quick overview of each of our respective companies and products, and then we'll go right into it. We'll go right into the 5 ways, and then, like I said, questions at the end. So starting off with Front. What's Front? Sarah, can you tell us what Front is?
Yeah, in just a few short sentences. Front is a collaboration email app. It helps teams work more efficiently together with new workflows, efficient collaboration, and it just makes sure that all their communication channels, say like Facebook or email or SMS, are in one place. And so with Front, our customer-facing teams have the context they need to create really great customer experiences. And here at Front, we work with over 4,600 customers around the world. So this topic is so near and dear and really hits home for me. And I'm so excited to be joined by fellow colleagues who are constantly thinking about ways that we should be delighting and engaging with our customer base because it is top of mind for us. And how do you do that at scale? So I'm excited to learn as well as share some ideas today.
Great. Ask Nicely. Aaron, tell us about Ask Nicely.
Yeah, thanks. And it's good to be here, by the way. So Ask Nicely is a customer feedback platform based around the Net Promoter Score framework. I guess our job is to help teams deliver the right experience to every customer. So this topic around scaling customer experiences is very dear to our heart, and I guess at its core for us, it's about figuring out how do you focus and motivate every member of your entire team to do the right thing for every customer. Now that speaks to culture. That's a hard problem to solve. So I'm really looking forward to this webinar. As an aside, calling you from Portland in Oregon today, just want to let you know that it started snowing outside, which is very exciting. We don't have snow in New Zealand, so it's awesome to see us outside. The whole city has gone to lockdown. We have like less than half an inch of snow, probably a quarter of an inch on the roads. All the schools are shut down. There's no traffic on the roads, but we're here. We're here to do this webinar with you. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, for braving the storm. I feel like in San Francisco it's raining right now. I feel like the city goes onto lockdown and shut down during the rain because we barely can handle that. But I wouldn't mind a little snow though. Actually, that would be cool to see in California. Salesloft. So the reason we have Salesloft actually as a guest and speaker today is Salesloft actually uses both Front and AskNicely, and so we're really excited to have both two speakers here. So Taylor, you want to tell us what Salesloft does?
Sure, and I was about to say, you took the words out of my mouth. We're so excited to be here as a customer of both Front and AskNicely, so I think this is a pretty fantastic gathering of the brains. Salesloft, so we're on a mission to activate the authentic seller in everyone. So to do that, we provide a sales engagement platform that gives sellers the tools, the process, the insight to deliver a better buying experience to their customers. And scaling is so important for us as we think especially about the customer experience, because we are working with sellers who have to be reactive and nimble with their customers. So as we grow and provide different experiences, we have to think about the evolving industry of sales and how to best support our customers.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in on the product side of things as well. Scaling is incredibly important to us, making sure that I, as the receiver of feedback, am not the endpoint for that it should be living on and carrying on to other people who need to hear it. So
nice. Well, thank you. And now before we move forward, this topic, 5 ways to scale customer experiences through frontline collaboration, I think it means something unique to each and every one of us, and we all come from different backgrounds. Sarah, customer success, and Taylor as well. Aaron running AskNicely, and then Nicole on the product side. Can each of you tell us what this means to you? Why don't we start backwards with Nicole, and then we'll go to Sarah at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of what I just highlighted, but being able to scale the process allows us to hear the customer voice and get their feedback and making sure that it's dispersed to the right people. You know, it's very easy to allow for customers to give us feedback and then kind of just let that sit there in a black box. But we want to really surface it and build what's right for the customer.
Great. Taylor, you want to?
Sure, absolutely. Feedback is huge. When I think about our customers, time is money. And so we want to be able to take that feedback, translate it into either a service or a way to make their lives easier so that when they're communicating with their customers, it's an even more effortless experience that they're able to provide. And ultimately, that's what we're on the road to do. And being able to collect all of that and translate it into providing that kind of scaled experience to make them faster is something we're constantly working through and trying to get better at.
Nice. Aaron, how about yourself?
Yeah, well, I think there's an element of management speak that comes around customer experience. We talk about brands and companies delivering customer experiences, but the reality is it isn't a company that delivers it. It's people. You know, it's marketing people, it's product people, it's sales people, and so the challenge sort of goes back to what I was saying before. It's like, how do you get an entire organization, the entire rump of your workforce, focused on doing the right thing for every customer every day? It speaks to culture. It speaks to process. It speaks to discipline. That stuff is hard. Of course, our view is that customer feedback is very much the fuel for that process. So you've got to be able to systemize the process of one, collecting feedback, making sure that gets through to the right person in the organization, so that they can take action on that and do the right thing for every customer. I think the analogy that I like to use is, if you imagine you're playing tennis, and it's a game that I'm terrible at, but as you're playing, you've got an umpire there, and that umpire's job is to tell you whether you got that shot in or out. Now, if you imagine that umpire was silent for the entire match, and then at the end of the match told you that you got 43% of your shots out and you lost the match, how do you improve your game? That umpire needs to tell you after every shot whether you hit the mark or not, so that you can improve your game on that very next shot. That feedback comes to you immediately. It comes to you verbally. It's presented to you, not your coach. It comes in words, not a PowerPoint at the end of the quarter. And again, it's this discipline that needs to be enacted, right across an organisation, on an ongoing basis. So very much our love language, and looking forward to talking more about it.
Great. Sarah?
Yeah, I think, just to build off of what everyone has already also shared, because that was all near and dear to me as well, is that you're going to continuously add more and more customers. You're there because you have customers. You're building an organization so that your customers have something that they can leverage. And so at the core of all of this is our customers. They are a part of our DNA. And as you grow that customer base, and I alluded to this earlier, like even for here at Front, we have so many of them, and they come from different use cases, different backgrounds, different sizes. They're geographically all over the world. Is how do you scale the delight that you offer them? How do you ensure that that feedback is getting embedded back into the organization? And these are not easy things to solve for, but the right companies are continuously asking that question and always doing self-reflection on what we can do better. And so it's exciting to kind of spend that time and talk about it out loud, and hopefully we can all walk away with some ideas.
Yeah, definitely. And I think from my perspective, being on the demand marketing side, to everyone's sharing the information, sharing the knowledge, so we know more about our customers, so we can relate to them more, send them the right messaging, is very valuable, very key. So thank you everyone for your take on that. Let's go right into the slides now. So number 1, align on goals and desired outcomes. So we're going to start off with Sarah. Stay aligned on shared goals. Can you tell us more about this, Sarah?
Yeah, and I like that this is like the first way that we share as a group too, because I think without making sure that both your organization internally is aligned and that you're continuously aligning with your customer base, then everything you're doing after that is not kind of boiling back up to something that is important to you as an organization. So I think even before aligning on those goals, it's really important, especially on the customer facing side, that we establish our customer journey and that we know all the critical internal roles, what impact they have along that customer journey. And that customer journey might evolve. I wouldn't say that it's something that you set once and then you're like, great, that's what will hold us true for years to come. You're continuously revisiting it. But having some sort of map allows you then to look quarter over quarter and set quarterly. Here at Front, we set OKRs. That stands for objectives and key results, but each company has a different flavor towards goal setting. But ensuring that you're not just setting annual goals, that you're setting them multiple times throughout the year, and then you're revisiting them because maybe priorities have shifted internally. Maybe there's not enough resources, so you have to kind of put it in a different bucket. So setting those goals and making sure that that can be both bottoms up and tops down, that it's a collaborative effort. For example, at Front, we also have Google Sheets, and they're public, so you can see different departments' OKRs. You can see how they tie back up to the whole company mission. And it's important that we have that transparency across the organization because it allows you to feel connected to what you're trying to achieve. And then I think the second piece of that is the external piece. As important as it is to align on internal objectives is, are you frequently thinking about those objectives with your customer base? So even from the sales process, when they're setting like, why are you purchasing our product? What's your goal with our product? Passing that off to the post-sales side, whether that's at your company, an onboarding manager or a customer success manager or support, that they're aware of what those initial goals are, and that throughout the customer's life cycle, you're touching back in on those specific goals that they've set. It could change when the point of contact changes. It could change when that company gets acquired, but not always making the assumption that the goal that they started with is the goal that they have throughout their life cycle of working with you.
Great. That's awesome. And connecting the point between company objectives and customer goals are your people. Taylor, tell us more about that.
Yeah, everything that Sarah said, I feel like is so resonant with what we aim for, which is as an organization bringing that transparency, bringing that information about what are our goals. We also use OKRs. But when I think about as we have been scaling the team and scaling the experiences, the most important connection between the company goals that we set and the goals that our customers have are our people. And they're going to be the ones who are on the phones. They're going to be the ones who are receiving that feedback and are going to be the stewards of that information to the next department or to the next person who needs to see the information. So I would challenge any leader who is working on scaling your customer experiences to start with your people and understand their goals and their passions and their interests, and then leverage that to think about what are the programs we want to build and who would be best to take ownership here. So I'll give an example there where a team member, Emily, is really passionate about being on the phone with customers and solving problems in the moment. Some people like the time to think through it. She's great at that in the moment conversation. So we've given her the program of office hours. And the outcome of that is that she's able to take full ownership of what that experience is and feels like to our customers. So she's putting her thumbprint on how we as an organization deliver that service to our customers, and she's doing something that she really loves. And I'm a firm believer that customers know when the person they're talking to really loves what they're doing. And so this is an area where I'm super passionate about continuously digging in. And just like you said, Sarah, things change. People's goals change, people's interests change. So this is something to be keeping up with consistently, but thinking about where your people sit in delivering that experience to your customers.
And Taylor, I think that is just, it's so key, right? Like I really appreciate that you mentioned the people side of it, because you want your team to be bought in. You want your company to be bought in, and they'll be bought in if they feel like they're passionate or their skills fall into what you're trying to ask of them to help the company mission, versus force-fitting something and then realizing that it mutually didn't work out later on. So I think that what you're doing is so important, and it's not easy either. It doesn't just come naturally. You have to consciously think about goal setting and making sure that it's you're working off of the people on your team or the customers that you work with, and you have to be very conscious of it on a regular basis. So I love that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I'm sure everyone here, we're moving a mile a minute, and the train is moving, and so that's a great point. Building in that time for self-reflection, both on the leadership side and on giving your people the time and space to bring that and reflect is critical.
Yeah, and I'm gonna touch on something that Sarah said in passing, was that like you said, here at Salesloft we do OKRs, but I know Sarah said that they have a shared spreadsheet, so where you can see other people's OKRs. I find that is so important to be able to access other people's OKRs. That's also how we do it in Salesloft, where you can go in and find anybody's, just so that I can see for my manager where are their goals aligned, and then take it a step up from there. Why are those my manager's goals, and then it's their manager's goals, and so on through the chain.
Great, thanks everyone. Yeah, I think just to add to that, going back to company objectives and customer goals and people being the center point, I think when you do have that, we're talking a lot about company objectives and people, when you have that really fluid back and forth between the two, it resonates with your customers. Your customers can see it. They can notice that they're dealing with a company that basically has it together. Their employees are happy, and that makes, I think, even happier customers. So great takeaways there. Thank you so much.
One thing that I'd add just quickly,
Yeah.
and certainly core to our love language here. I guess we're talking about customer experiences, but why is the customer experience so important? I mean, from our perspective, ultimately, it's the thing that dictates whether a customer is going to come back for more, or better yet, tell other people about your thing. You know, and these are the modern levers of growth. I think the modern consumer doesn't trust marketers like me anymore. You know, they're making purchase decisions based on what their friends are saying and what reviews are saying. So ultimately, all that comes down to the customer experience. So if you want to grow your business, it's about making sure you get that experience right for every customer every time, and that's got to be the best diet for growth.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Aaron. Going on to the number 2, closing the feedback loop with customers. So Taylor, once again, take it away.
Yeah, so it's funny, when I saw this prompt, I thought I had this sort of visceral reaction, like closing the loop. Man, I never want to close anything with a customer. But it's you know, what we all talk about is closing the loop, making sure that we're getting back to them and resolving their needs. There's absolutely a place for when customers provide you feedback. You know, it's a gift. They have taken time out of their day to provide you detailed information, just like Aaron was saying. I love that analogy. You know, where did your hit or your ball land? Was it in or was it out? I love that. It is a gift. It's also a window into what they're thinking about and what they care about. So the first piece around closing the loop, absolutely get it to resolution. But after that point, create processes that are going to allow you to resurface that information down the road as you have value to add in those areas. So here at Salesloft, we leverage Front, and we tag the conversations that we're having with our customers, especially feedback. You know, we do really detailed look into what they're telling us, and we tag on parts of the platform. So sticky parts of the platform, topical areas that the customer has alluded to as of interest to them. And then down the line, let's say 3 months from now, we release a cool white paper, or we've got a webinar coming up. We're able to surface those customers who have indicated to us that that's an area of interest for them, and target them and saying, hey, thinking of you guys, we've got this new great resource. I'd love for you to see it. Or with our product team, with Nicole's team, you know, we have a team here who wants to do interviews with customers who are interested in that feature that you talked about. We'd love to engage you in that conversation. And so there's a 2-part process here. There's the initial working with the customer through the feedback they're giving you, but creating that process to be able to continue the conversation throughout the lifetime.
Yeah, and Taylor kind of stole some words out of my mouth there about spending some time with the customer. So my key takeaway is automation is key for scaling the feedback loop. I did want to say the caveat to this is that by automation, I do not by any means mean canned messaging or just automating sending things out to your customers. If they are taking the time to give you this valuable feedback, you need to take the time to personally, you know, look at it and take a hand on it. Automation is more for a way to scale the feedback process. So what we do is we have something that automates and essentially queues people up when they give us certain types of feedback. So I focus mainly on NPS using AskNicely. So if anybody rates us an 8 or below, we reach out to them and try to better understand why they gave us that score, what they're looking for, what was driving that score for them, so we can bring that back to the product team. And this directly influences our roadmap. And then in the future, in regards to closing the loop, we'll also, not only do we close the loop with them and the feedback they're giving us and reach out and better understand what they're saying, but then going back at a later point, if we do build something that a customer had requested, we have programs where we tag what they had requested, and we're able to go back and say, okay, this list of people had asked for X, Y, and Z, which we've now built. Let's go ahead and just send them an email and say, hey, we heard you, and we know that you wanted to see this built, so we went ahead and built it. Take a look at it, and then it's really good for even future feedback that opens the door for more. So they get to look at this new feature, and then I can come back to them and say, okay, what did you think? Is this what you had expected it to be? And opening the door to more.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday about automation, and I think it can be a word that can be misinterpreted. And I think the main point is you want to definitely be human. It doesn't mean to be robotic, but you do need processes in place that could help you scale. And then that could get you back to your customer or back to your team faster and quicker, and just make things run a lot smoother. So I definitely like that caveat, Nicole. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm really keen to underline Taylor's point too around the point around feedback and action feedback being the start of a process or a relationship with the customer, not the end. I think by a customer responding to something like an NPS survey and providing you some feedback, which I agree is absolutely a gift to the business, that's a signal that as a customer, I'm open to having a dialogue, a conversation, and that's really an opportunity to be taken up by the business to continue that dialogue and ultimately nurture that person from being a customer into an advocate. That's step one on the path to advocacy. So super important.
And that's an area. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You go.
I was just saying that that's an area that me and Taylor get to really work together in, is when people are giving me on the product side, feedback. It's bound that other things surface. If they're having any struggles with the team or optimizing or customer success or anything, then I can bring in whoever needs to be their customer success manager. I reach out to Taylor all the time and say, hey, take a look at this. So just opening the door to work with other departments as well.
Yeah, I guess the other sort of practical aspect of this, and I wonder if perhaps on the webinar, there might be people saying, goodness, we've got thousands of customers with tens or hundreds of thousands of users. How do I manage this sort of torrent, this fire hose of feedback? It sounds unreasonable. And I think there's a real practical key to it that organizations are adopting more and more now, which is to turn this into a daily process. And the old approach to customer feedback was to send a survey once a year, and you would get this avalanche of feedback. And there's two big problems with that. One is that there's a volume problem, because as an organization, you're not told to be able to manage thousands of pieces of feedback and at once. And then there's an obsolescence problem, because that feedback often is relating to problems or experiences that a customer may have had months ago. If you can turn it into a daily process where you're collecting feedback from customers at a particular moment of truth, either they've just bought for you or they've reached some sort of milestone in the life cycle of your product, then that feedback is fresh, and that customer is going to be more open to receiving a response about it. But the critical, most practical thing of it is if you're doing this every day, then as an organization, now it's part of the rhythm of how you do things. Everybody across the organization is thinking and having conversations around the customer experience. It's becoming cultural for you. And of course, from a volume perspective, obviously you're only getting a certain amount each day that you need to deal with, so it becomes more manageable.
Great. Yeah, no, that I think creating that culture is actually very important, and getting the whole team rallied behind that. Thanks, Aaron, for that. Moving on to number 3. Collaborate across departments for the next best action.
Yeah,
So Aaron.
I think actually, Aaron, that was a great segue, because you're talking about baking in this process across your organization. And that means it's not just the customer-facing teams. I mean, we have representatives from product in the business, and all across the organization, people are invested in making sure that we're solving and addressing customer feedback as soon as possible. And so, oh, Aaron, I totally side-talked you, by the way, I realized. So apologies for that. But I'm going to keep going. I would just make sure that, you have certain, issues or questions that are coming in. And it might be a different process for whether it's a bug, an escalation, a commercial question, but you're first thinking about how you see that conversation flowing throughout the company, and then you find the right tools that can really help you with that process really seamlessly. So yes, at Front, we do drink our own champagne, and we leverage Front for this. And I by no means want to make that a plug, but I think it is really powerful that I haven't experienced before in my career, where these incoming queries might be coming in, and we are internally pulling in the right people, and it's flowing through, whether it's through product or through support or through the CS team, and we're getting the right insight that we need really quickly. But the customer doesn't necessarily see all of that internal conversation and dialogue. What they see is the magical outcome, whether it is the right next step, whether it is a solve to their question, whether it's the resource that they had desired. And for them, it was like, great, you were able to get me an answer quickly versus, a discovery question or forwarding that conversation on. We were able to solve it internally first, and then they get to just be delighted by what is next.
Totally. I think the one thing that triggers in my mind is as a customer provides feedback, let's say to an NPS survey, and they get a response, through a platform like ours or through a platform like Front, which obviously allows businesses and teams to respond to customers at scale. The reaction on the customer side is they often fall off their chair because they don't expect a business to respond in a way that's personal to their particular issue. This is next level customer experience, and it really speaks to the core of what I guess today's topic in terms of delivering personalized customer experiences at scale. And I guess underlying that is it's not something that happens through the Herculean deeds of individuals. You need technology to be able to support that, and we shouldn't forget about that.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I've actually using AskNicely, we get the NPS feedback and then we reach out to them, and it's funny because there's so many times where somebody is so surprised that we reached out. In the message, I typically, if they left a text feedback, I'll include something that is referring back to that, being like, you mentioned X, Y, and Z. And so many times I'm so surprised that you reached out. I've had a handful of people actually be like, I want to change my score. I'm going to up you guys too, just for reaching out. And I'm like, thank you. It's not about the score for us. It's really about just understanding what you're looking for. But it's always just nice to hear that they feel heard and appreciated.
I love that you brought that up, Nicole, and it kind of hits on as well, Erin and Sarah, what you were saying. Sarah, I know that your team does a great job of, like you said, kind of working behind the scenes and making those handoffs really seamless. And one thing that we try to do in that process as well is making sure that you're teeing up your colleague for success. Nicole does a great job of this. We get the feedback, and like she was saying, she's re-articulated what the pains actually are. We have the small benefit of Nicole was on the customer success team before she was on product, so she's got a window into that brain space. But in those handoffs between teams, putting the ownership on that first team member to tee up to the next team member what's going on and what is their thought process around what the next action should be. The beauty of all of this is that we have so many people and perspectives involved that it would be a miss not to get that person to say, I think this is the direction they're headed. And then we can course correct or say yes or no, or say that was an interesting perspective, but we're empowering people to make a guess or make a move in the right direction to get the conversation going where it needs to be.
Yeah, and sometimes that next best action doesn't have to be that you have to take something and respond to the customer. So for example, we also use AskNicely for NPS, and our CEO will sometimes share company-wide some of these NPS responses. And the next best action was that the whole company gets to see and read this response about a customer. And I think that's so powerful.
Awesome.
So sometimes that next best action can be, yes, you are solving and you're addressing a customer situation, but sometimes it can also be that next best action is motivating your internal company and getting them closer to the customer story. And that's one really quick and easy way that we do it here.
I love that example, Sarah. That's absolutely true. Matilda, our CEO, will tag the entire company using Front, and it's pretty awesome to see that feedback and see the emojis start popping up and everybody rallying around that. Thank you, everyone, for that. Moving on to the next one. Number 4, distribute meaningful data across teams and systems. I knew data would come up at some point during this presentation. Aaron, you want to tell us more?
Oh, this is dangerous because I get a bit soapboxy when this type of topic comes up. I think about how companies historically have taken a very old-fashioned approach to customer feedback. Once a year, you send out a huge long survey to all of your customers. The majority of them ignore it, and then you get this avalanche of feedback that some poor person then squeezes into a 50-page PowerPoint presentation, and then we all huddle into the boardroom and sit around a big table looking up at a screen as an executive team, getting strokey beady about the numbers and dots on charts, and tell ourselves that this is the day that we're learning to and listening to our customers. All the while, the people that are out there dealing with customers, delivering experiences, are deaf to this conversation. To me, this is a really key focus for us as a business and for companies that really do this well, which is to get the feedback into the hands of the frontline people that are actually dealing with customers whilst it's fresh. And that's about, like we talked about before, making it a daily process, but also making sure that we can surface the insights in a way that's relevant to individual roles and get it onto the right screen. Now, if you're somebody in a support or customer service function, then a tool like Front is sort of the natural and obvious place to put that. But if you're in a product function, maybe your feedback needs to be funneled in some way into a tool like Product Board, so that you can start prioritizing and road mapping particular needs. Or if you're a salesperson, it needs to come into Salesforce, or maybe into your Slack, or your or onto a TV screen. Because the issue here is, how do we get the right feedback onto the right screen for the right role, and that's what makes it impactful for individuals to be able to take action on it.
Definitely. Taylor, you want to tell us more about monitoring trends?
Yes. So I love that point. How do you get the right data onto the right screen? And when I think about scale is more data. We have more data points than we've ever had before, and deciphering which of those data points is most important to put in front of someone gets harder and harder as you have more information to sift through. And so I would say that data is only as impactful as your ability to create actions and the next step out of it. So by that I mean, you could slice the data 10 times till Sunday, but if you don't have a suggestion or an idea of how to take that and make something of it and make the customer experience better by doing X, Y, Z, then the data is just going to sit there and live on its own. So Aaron, you mentioned, kind of empowering and engaging with the frontline team, because those are the folks who are getting that feedback on a regular basis. So one thing that we've started with when we think about data is the emotional side of it. Was this a positive customer outcome, or was this a frustrating moment? And so we've been trying to look at what are the trends between those two sides of the coin. Where do we have those frustrating moments, and where do we have those shout outs, those wins where customers are over the moon? So we've been tagging both and trying to dissect what are the actions that lead to either one of those outcomes. And that takes time. Some people, when you think data, you think instant gratification, but actually it's a starting point for uncovering what those actions were that led to it. So as an example, and how data has informed our strategy, is we looked directly at those shout outs, those customer wins, when were customers just over the moon. And what we started to find is the responses that our team was providing that led to those shout outs always had a video involved. So if our team was sitting there creating just a 3-minute, 30-second video of how to accomplish what they were trying to accomplish, that is what was spurring all of that great positive feedback. So we were able to parlay that into how we deliver now responses to our customers, not just on our team, but in other teams. So we took that, we started doing it, we got more shout outs, we got great customer feedback, and we were able to tell that emotional story in the organization so that it wasn't just limited to our team, but teams across the company who were able to bake that in as a part of their strategy as well.
Taylor, that was great because as you were talking, I was about to ask you, like, how do you continuously assess whether you're looking at the right data or not, or if you're looking at too much versus the critical information? And you answered it along the way saying if you can't take action on it, then it's probably something you shouldn't be focusing on. And I'm already thinking about a few that I'm looking at regularly that it's probably just, we're looking at it, but there isn't action being taken on it. And it's probably just distracting the company or the team from what we should really be laser focused on. So I've already kind of written that down as like my next to do.
That's cool. It's hard. You know, you want to try and get the whole story, and sometimes in trying to get the whole story, it slows us down. So scale at its finest. But I'd love to know your all's ideas as well, because we're constantly iterating on that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very important topic. When to use data, when it's actually providing results or maybe distracting you. And I think no matter what department or team you're working at, it's a constant struggle. And like Sarah said, you don't want to let it, push you away from being laser focused on the task at hand. So very tricky balance, I think, but really great points by everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, so our last one, create a shift to a customer obsessed culture. So Aaron.
Yeah, well, I guess it goes back to the initial point where we started, this idea that businesses or brands don't deliver customer experiences, people do. When we're talking about how do you focus and motivate an entire workforce to do the right thing for every customer every day? Well, that's about culture, right? And culture's hard, culture's messy, and to make this happen, it needs to be something that's an always on focus, something that's embraced, across, from top to bottom of an organization. Really loved Sarah's point about the front CEO celebrating great feedback and making that visible across the organization. The idea that you can just with a click tag an entire team and say, hey guys, here's something that we should all be proud of and that we should all and all focus, front operating at its best. That takes seconds to do, but sends an incredible signal right across the organization. One, that this is important, and two, that as a CEO, she's looking at this. This is important. If she's thinking about customer feedback and customer experience, then maybe the rest of us need to as well. So really impactful thing that can happen, right at the top of an organization, but also be felt right down at the front lines as well. So I think there are a number of really practical things that as a business you can do to foster that culture. And just thinking about the brands that do this really well. Often we celebrate businesses like Zappos, which has created this sort of slew of heroic customer experience stories that we've all heard over time, and they get retold again and again and again. I think that that's one of the real powerful takeaways that you can get out of a strong, systematic customer feedback process, where if you're looking for examples of your business operating at its best, being able to surface and identify those through the daily feedback process that we've been talking about, celebrate those internally, share those stories in a way that your frontline people can then go on and share them with their customers, and then customers can share those stories as well. And that's really just about creating a daily dialogue. So we see the customers that do this well, doing things like daily huddles in various different functions, reflecting on the feedback that they've received from the previous day, sharing the stories of when things have gone really well, and again, celebrating, catching people in the act of doing things right, not wrong, and then making an example of them. Let's again showcase those stories and all hands sessions, and make those stories easy to share. And the other aspect to it, I think, is just making sure that appreciation is part of the way that we do things as a business. So I think the features that you talked about inside Front and also inside things like Ask Nicely, where you can celebrate acts of great customer experience, call out the people and behind them. That again motivates us to continue delivering a great experience to the next customer, and the next, and turning that into the way that we do things around here.
Yeah. And I think that creating a shift to a customer obsessed culture is so important. And Erin, to what you were saying, it is very important when people are acknowledging it. So one of our core values of the company is customer first. And this is something that we recognize weekly, and looking at who's exemplifying customer first and what they did to do that. I also really enjoy exposing people who may not necessarily regularly get customer interactions to customers. We've got product managers, engineers who it's very easy to just kind of sit back and not have these constant interactions with customers. But feedback coming directly from the mouth of a customer, whether it's frustration or happiness, means so much more than me being able to portray it to them. So we always try to get people from multiple departments just to be able to sit in on a customer call. They don't necessarily need to do anything, but just being able to listen to the customer. And then another thing that we do is in our all hands, which this is one of my favorite things. Every week we do kind of a customer love aspect of it, where every single department, it switches off each week, but every department has to come up with some type of customer story. And this is definitely difficult for some departments, because I know you're thinking like recruiting or accounting, how do they come up with these customer love stories? But the way that they get so creative and makes them really dig deep and think about how they're affecting the customer has so much value. For example, we had our recruiting team, their customer love story was talking about how we get so many candidates from people who are users of Salesloft, and they've just loved interacting with us and loved the product. And so now they want to come here. And that's very customer first, because we provided that good experience so much that they wanted to come work for us. And then we also do it through NPS, which is constantly an area of focus. It's a score that can only be influenced by the customers. We don't have any type of influence towards changing that number or anything. We get all of that feedback from the customer. And this is something that is shown regularly. In our weekly updates, we always include NPS and where it's at. Some positive, some negative things we've heard that week, because it's important to highlight both. And it's just reminding people that this is just such an important part of it, and that our customers are the core of our organization.
That's great. I love story. That's just awesome.
I have a question for you, Erin. Sometimes I get asked this question, and it's, yes, you can do a lot of things to start baking in a culture of being more customer centric or customer obsessed. But what if your leadership is, it's just not something a part of their DNA? And I'm lucky here at Front because I can see it across our leadership team, and I see it in everything that Matilda does on a daily basis. But what advice do you have to other companies who are trying to get their top leadership to change their focus on being more customer centric?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously, ideally, it's nice when this is driven top down, like everything. But feedback is one of the things that you can really embrace at a grassroots level in your organization. So yeah, let's say you're within a support function, and you've got people on a daily basis dealing with often what are the problems that customers are having, which is can be a slightly draining part of life. If you're able to start getting feedback from your customers in a way that surfaces the positives as well as the negatives, that in itself can just really change the culture within a team. We're actually hearing from customers who would otherwise not contact you, saying, "Hey, look, I really love what this business does." It engenders a pride in people's roles in the product, which I think is really powerful. But it also shows the value that a function like support does towards driving customer happiness and advocacy. I think that once you can embed a process like that within even just a part of the business, that becomes infectious, because it's something that you can very easily share higher up in an organization. What we find is that CEOs that see that suddenly get the light turned on for how customers feel about a particular part of the business, it becomes infectious and addictive. And the question is, well, why aren't we doing this right across the business? So it's a real good opportunity for people to demonstrate some leadership and also gain a lot more profile in the organization for the positive aspects that the function is contributing to.
I love it.
Thank you so much. I love both of these points so much. That example of every department giving a customer story is really great, because sometimes we don't realize that every department is involved with customers, and I think that definitely helps creating customer obsessed culture. Thank you all so much. We're done. We're done with our 5 slides, and we're now time for our Q&A. That was quick, and so we have a few questions so far. Let's start off with this one. This is for everyone. How do you handle feature requests for features you won't be building?
I can go ahead and jump in on that one. So this is something that we deal with often. So we'll get an NPS, we'll reach out to them, and they'll be like, I gave it a 0 because it doesn't do this, and I need to have this to do my job. And there's just times where, unfortunately, that's not on the roadmap in order for us to kind of build that out for them. And it's difficult, and it's something I had to deal with in CS as well. To say, like, unfortunately, this isn't something that we're currently looking at. But I'm a true believer that honesty is best. I will never tell somebody that something's on the roadmap when I know that it's not. I hesitate to tell people that it's on the roadmap, even when it is. And I'm sure you all understand why, but it's just best to be honest with that person, and then give them a reasoning. So kind of going for the idea that there's other things that are prioritized, or any reasoning that you can give them. A lot of the time it might be just such a niche thing that we're not able to really dig in there, or we've actually, something that's come up a lot is they want us to build out a certain part. And unfortunately, that's just not a priority for us, but we've partnered and integrated with these other organizations where that's all they do, and they're so great at it. And so we partner with them to enable you to be able to do that, but that's just not a priority for us to build right now.
And Nicole, I was really interested, just thinking about our own feedback process. Every day we're getting suggestions and thoughts around things that customers would like to see in the product roadmap. And obviously it's tempting to, you'd love to be able to build everything for everybody. But how do you go about prioritizing, you're using feedback to prioritize what you actually do put into the roadmap?
Yeah, and this is something that I think everyone, and this is something we reiterate often. I think it's something we'll continue to reiterate, but it's just being able to, and no matter where we get the feedback from, because obviously it comes from different angles. It comes from the CSMs who are talking to managers. It comes from the NPS calls. It comes from, we have an in-app feedback session where they can just leave it there. And so all of this feedback gets congregated into, so we use Product Board here at Salesloft. And then our product managers, who are the ones deciding what essentially gets built for each section, they're the ones going through, and it could be 100 a day. So it's not an easy task, but I know it's so beneficial of them going through and tagging them. So this one is a request for X. And so that while we're looking at what's next, what should we be building next, we're able to look into Product Board and say, okay, this certain feature or this certain upgrade has 300 customers who had requested it. It's clearly very important. It's something that we should be focused on. And so then we're able to take action on it. Is that a good answer to your question?
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And presumably, Taylor, like if people are coming back with feedback about particular aspects of the experience that need to be re-engineered and customer success, I mean, do you do a similar thing in terms of being able to tag and group like requests to act on?
Yeah,
you got it. Exactly. We do a lot of that tagging. And sorry, Nicole, didn't need to overtalk you there. I was going to say on that was it's really important in the customer success function that when we think about creating that customer obsessed culture, that we're coaching the team how to handle those moments and not just take it at face value. So, in an ideal world, when we connect that feedback to Nicole's team, we've not just heard the feature requests, we've dug into why are they asking about that? What is their business pain? Why is this causing a roadblock? We're also able to communicate the philosophy of where our platform is headed. And I think that's really important when you can position for the customer, this may not be directly involved, but let me tell you about the vision of where we're going. Like, come with us. Let me talk about that for a little bit. That helps continue the conversation, and then they're able to respond with whether that's still a pain, and if so, we're absolutely able to communicate that to our product team. But I think coaching our teams to dig in is a really important part of this, so that we're able to meaningfully escalate that to the product team as necessary.
Love it.
Nice. We have a question from Winston. What is a good interval to survey customers for NPS? Seems like once a year is too large of a gap and might only reflect a recent transaction / project, good or bad, that might not have gone well and skewing scores. Thoughts on that?
I'll have a go at it. So I think it depends on the style of business. So if you're a B2C sort of services style business, it'll make sense to survey a customer directly after they've had an experience with your brand. I think if you're a B2B SaaS business like Front or like Salesloft, it makes sense to identify what are the moments of truth in the customer lifecycle where it's really important to capture that feedback, and often that's just after they've been onboarded, or after they've had they're 90 days into their relationship, or when they're coming up for renewal. Key moments that it's really important to gauge the health of the relationship. What we find is most common is to do it on a quarterly basis, and aligning those junctures with those key moments in the life cycle.
And I can jump in from Salesloft's perspective. We do it a touch differently. So, we do have those key moments, but we're constantly adding customers. The company is constantly moving, and so we want to move with it. We actually survey customers for NPS on a daily basis, but we limit the amount that we're going to get. So I personally will not be overloaded and gotten 500 feedback today and then 400 tomorrow and trying to juggle all of that. So we're able to, within Ask Nicely, limit the amount that we're going to get in a day so that we can still survey a wide range of customers. But then I'm able to digest that and look at the data and reach out to those people and try to figure out, what's going right, what's going wrong. So we do ours on a daily.
Would you add a rule in that says that once somebody has been surveyed, that they don't receive another feedback request for a certain period?
Yeah, we do. It is 90 days. So we try to give people a 90-day break before we pop up on the bottom of the screen. And that's another thing about Salesloft using NPS. Typically, it's done through email. We do it as a small pop-up on the bottom of our software because that's where our users live, and that's where we're able to catch the most feedback. But we do have it so where once a person responds, or even if they reject answering, they won't get asked again for 90 days.
That's some world-class NPS best practice right there. Awesome.
So we're about almost over with time. We do have a few more questions, but we'll get back to everyone offline, so don't worry. I'll make sure to get these questions to the specific people. I know, Taylor, you have a few questions, but thank you everyone so much for this. Just one more last bit of information. Here are all of our LinkedIn information. So if you want to connect with us, if you want to ask more questions, feel free to do so. If you also want to speak with sales, please let us know too. We can direct you to our sales teams at each of our products. But yeah, that's about it. Like I said, all these last few questions, sorry we weren't able to get to it, but we will get to you guys offline. We're also going to be sending the recording shortly after this. And thank you, everyone, especially our speakers. Thank you so much, and especially our guests as well. Thank you for attending. This was a really great turnout. I learned a ton. I had so much fun. I hope everyone else did. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks,
Yeah, thank you,
everyone.
everyone.